If you're an acrylic painter who's frustrated by color mixing, trust me when I say you are not alone. After over a decade of working with acrylic paints, I've seen firsthand the unique challenges of color mixing with acrylic. Some of the reasons you've been struggling may be really obvious, while others might surprise you. But in this video, I will be taking you through my top 5 color mixing mistakes that you might be making with acrylic paint and how to fix them. If we haven't met yet, my name is Marianne and I'm an artist and educator, and I teach painting on my YouTube channel and through my courses. I've also written a free 36-page introduction to acrylic painting ebook that I have linked in the description below. So if you're interested in learning more about acrylic painting, you can go and download it for absolutely free. Now, as a teacher, I try to really pay attention when I hear the same statement repeated by multiple people in different settings. And the sentence I kept hearing over and over again was, "I don't know how to mix color. Please help." So to that end, let's go through the top 5 color mixing issues that you are likely experiencing with your acrylic paintings. We'll start with mistake number 5, using too many colors. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, especially if you're first getting started in your painting practice. After all, isn't it just a shortcut to use pre-mixed colors instead of mixing them yourself? Why bother to mix an orange or a turquoise if you can just use them straight from the tube? But what I've discovered is that the more experienced you are, the fewer colors you actually need, and the stronger your paintings will become as a result. This is because paintings that use fewer colors are far more likely to have color harmony. Color harmony is when all of the colors within a painting are visually pleasing. There's no jarring colors or strange mixes that feel out of place in the overall composition, meaning the paintings just look good because all the colors go together naturally. Many professional artists, including myself, use what's called a limited palette, which is when an artist limits their palette to just a small selection of paint colors, which results in overall unified paintings. One famous example of this was the Zorn palette, which consisted of yellow ochre, a warm red, which was typically a vermilion or a cadmium red, ivory black, and white. Using only those 4 colors resulted in an absolutely gorgeous body of work that was both warm and versatile. Similarly, contemporary painters like John Potoshnik often use a very limited palette of just 1 red, 1 yellow, 1 blue, and white, while sometimes incorporating an earth tone like burnt umber. In one of the videos on his YouTube channel, John says, "I believe in simplicity." If you're struggling with your color mixing, it could be that you've got complexity instead from just having too many colors on your palette. Now, if this sounds like it could be you, take a look at your palette. How many colors straight from the tube are you using? Are you using pre-mixed secondary colors like oranges, greens, and purples? If so, you could be accidentally adding colors that clash with other colors in your painting. To fix this, next time you go to create a painting, spend some time before you start trying to figure out which colors are most important to get accurate. Usually it's the focal point of your subject. From there, you can build out the rest of your limited palette, knowing full well that you have all the right colors to mix the most important part of your piece. I typically use a limited palette of only 5 colors or a split primary palette, where each primary is split into a warm or cool version of itself to give the full range of the hue. For example, if I've got a cool red, that means I can go all the way to purple, and if I've got a warm red, I can go all the way to orange. This gives me tremendous flexibility while still ensuring that I have color harmony throughout the entire painting. I have listed my favorite limited palette combinations in the description below, so you can check it out there. So if your problem is that you're making color mixes that seem out of place or are visually jarring in your painting, the fix for this is to restrict your palette to 1 red, 1 yellow, 1 blue, and maybe an earth tone, and you will achieve so much greater harmony throughout your paintings. Remember, we are making paintings, not copying your reference photo. So it's better to have a visually harmonious work than to try and mix your colors to be identical to a photo only for everything to clash. This leads us into our next common mistake. Mistake number 4. Choosing colors with the wrong undertones. When I walked into an art store for the first time, I was shocked by the sheer number of primaries available. I was expecting to be able to find primary red, primary yellow, primary blue, but instead I was greeted by crazy names like phthalocyanine blue, I don't even know if I said that right, quinacridone magenta, burnt sienna, raw sienna, naphthol red, and so on. Try saying quinacridone magenta 5 times fast, I dare you. The reason that there are so many different colors on the market instead of pure primaries is mostly due to two reasons. The first reason is that while artists have always used pigments that function as primaries, truly chemically pure and synthesized primaries are a bit more of a recent development. In the grand history of painting, artists would use what pigments were available to them at that time, which usually included using ground up minerals, pigments, and chemicals combined with oil. They didn't have the technology to isolate, synthesize, and mass produce a true pure primary, so they used what they had. The second reason that we still don't use synthesized pure primaries, even now, is that those same chemicals and minerals used by artists hundreds of years ago have excellent consistency, coverage, and they're archival, meaning that those colors in your paint will last for over 100 years without fading. Now, some of those historical ingredients, like lead white, turned out to be super toxic, but many of those colors are safe and are still used today because they are more powerful and last longer than their synthesized counterparts. The good and the bad of using these colors is that they all have their own unique personality that comes out as soon as they mix with other colors. For example, some primaries lean warm. Red leans towards orange, yellows lean towards orange, and blues lean towards red. Other primaries lean cool. So the reds lean towards purple, yellows lean towards green, and the blues lean towards green. If you want to mix a really clean, vibrant purple, you need to combine a red-leaning blue and a blue-leaning red, like you'll see in this example. Here I'm combining ultramarine blue, which has a red undertone, with quinacridone magenta, which has a blue undertone. Basically, they lean together and create this vibrant purple hue. But if you mix in a red that leans in the opposite direction, like this cadmium red medium, into the same ultramarine blue that I just used, you get a much muddier, muted purple. Why? Cadmium red leans towards orange, meaning it contains some yellow, which, when mixed with the blue, results in a muted grayish purple. So if your painting needs a very vibrant purple, but you're using a red and a blue that lean away from each other, you won't get the right color. It's just a total non-starter. Now, I should add that while there might be the wrong undertone in your selected colors based on your subject, there are no wrong colors in general. Like, a muted color is not a bad color, it's just less intense, which might actually be what you need for your painting. So if you want to fix this issue in your color mixing, then take the time to learn about the undertones in each one of your paint colors and figure out if they're warm or cool. If you need to mix a more vibrant color, mix together two colors that lean together on the color wheel. If you want a muddier color, mix colors that are pulling away from each other. And as a pro tip, if you're not sure what your paint color's undertones are, then simply take the name of your paint, do a Google search, or ask an AI search platform like ChatGPT specifically what the undertones of that color are and if it has a warm or cool bias. By the way, if you're finding this useful, I did just release a color mixing course just for acrylic painters, and I have linked that in the description below. In the course, I teach you everything I know about mixing colors with acrylic, and we'll do 26 pages of real-time exercises together, in addition to some cool bonuses like doing a color study for a flower painting that I will be turning into a larger painting tutorial for this channel. But I digress. So let's talk about the next common mistake. Mistake number 3, not paying attention to opacity levels. This is a big one and often doesn't receive the attention that it deserves. Opacity is how transparent or opaque your paint color is. Transparent colors show the colors underneath and often appear very streaky when applied because the brush strokes are more obvious and visible. Opaque colors have better coverage and are typically less streaky. However, because of the unique chemical makeup of your paints and the ingredients that are special to each color, some colors are naturally transparent while other colors are naturally opaque. It's neither good nor bad, it's just how they are. Now, you can find this information on most paint tubes, typically in a small square. An empty square, just like this one, typically means that it is transparent, a half-filled square means that it's semi-transparent, and a full solid black square means that it's opaque. Some brands may vary slightly, so just make sure to check the labeling guide. A transparent color is not a bad thing. You can use this to your advantage by deliberately layering a transparent color on top of another color to build dimension in your painting. Let's use a transparent color like quinacridone magenta as an example. Here's how it looks on its own. Here's how it looks when it's layered on top of cadmium yellow medium. And here's how it looks when it's layered on green, mixed with cadmium yellow medium and ultramarine blue. As you can see, the end result is completely different and depends entirely on what the base layer is. Now, this can be a really good thing if that final layered color was what you were looking for, or it could be super frustrating if you had been hoping to cover up the color underneath. So the fix for this mistake is that if you wanted to cover something up with a transparent color, but you didn't want to see the other color underneath, what you need to do is build a supporting layer made from an opaque color. For example, let's take the green again. Instead of going over the green first with the magenta, I'm instead going to go over it with a pink mixed with magenta and white, since white is opaque. Once I let that layer fully dry, then I'm going to go over it with the transparent quinacridone magenta, and it covers up the green no problem. Sometimes the problem isn't actually with your color mixing, it's with your color layering. Now that you know this, you can address this problem by using strategic layers. This is also one of the perks of working with acrylic paint, since it dries so fast. Use this to your advantage by layering your colors to mix them optically, meaning that your eyes are reading multiple dried layers together instead of mixing the final color directly on the palette and applying it to your painting in a single layer. That brings us to mistake number 2, not realizing that acrylic paint dries darker. Fact. Most acrylic paints dry darker than how they appear on your palette, and the reason for it has to do with its formula. All acrylic paints have at least 3 ingredients: the pigment, which is the color, the binder, which is the acrylic polymer that adheres the paint to a surface, and water, which is why you can safely mix water into acrylic paints without issue. The acrylic binder has a milkiness to it when it's wet that turns clear when it dries. As a result, all of the colors that you think you're mixing will dry a shade darker when you apply it to your canvas, if left unchecked. This can make all of your paintings feel darker and heavier than anticipated. It can also cause a great deal of frustration because if you're not aware that it's happening, it can seem as though the colors are shifting right before your eyes. Here's how you fix it. You can either overcompensate for this while you're mixing your colors by lightening your color mixes ever so slightly to make up for the darkening that's yet to come, or by using layers. Just like with opacity, one of the best fixes for this problem is to think in layers. When you're mixing your colors, do your best to match the color that you need to mix. Then see how it behaves when it dries. If you need to lighten some of your colors, just do a second layer that's lighter, and both layers will work together to create an overall smoother painting that has a lot of depth and nuance to it. Last, but certainly not least, the number 1 common mistake with color mixing is using only white, gray, and black to adjust your colors and values. This is hands down the one thing I wish that someone had told me when I was first starting painting. If you want to guarantee that your work looks lifeless and dull, use black and grays mixed from black to mix your colors. Here's the first of my 2 reasons why. Reason number 1 is when you look at white versus black, white reflects the full spectrum of light, which is why it's bright, and black absorbs the full spectrum of light, which is why it's dark. So if you introduce a pigment that absorbs light, it will make your paintings and color mixes feel dull. When I'm creating paintings, I want the opposite effect. I want my work to look luminous, like it's lit from within as its own little world. So instead of using a pre-mixed black for my darks, I usually just combine ultramarine blue and burnt umber, which together create a dark value that appears to almost be black, but since it's made from 2 combined colors, colors that are often repeated elsewhere throughout the painting to achieve color harmony, it feels lighter and more luminescent. Using those two colors means that I also get to tilt the mix to be either warm or cool. So instead of a flat, boring, neutral gray, I can mix a range of warm or cool grays, which feels more true to life. Now, the second reason that black makes your work feel dull and lifeless is because it sucks the chroma out of your colors. There are 3 dimensions within each color. The first is the hue, which is the color family like red or blue. The second is the value, which is how light or dark a color is. And the third is the chroma. Chroma is how saturated or pure a color is. When you squeeze a red paint out of the tube, it is as pure as it gets and cannot be made more saturated. When you add neutral gray or black to a color, it slowly drains the chroma. So even though you're able to adjust the value, you are losing the saturation. Let's use cadmium yellow medium as a prime example. Watch what happens when I create a color string using Mars black. You might notice that as it moves from the yellow into the black, the progression appears almost green. That's because blacks often have a blue undertone. And when you combine that with the yellow, you get a green. Let's compare that with mixing the yellow into a purple instead. Purple is yellow's complementary opposite. And instead of stripping away the yellow's saturation, it slowly darkens the value and preserves the chroma while slowly shifting the hue from yellow to purple. This means that the color progression here appears as a gradually darkened yellow that maintains its warmth, while the progression with the Mars black just slowly turns that yellow into a dark green. Remember, just because you see a color in shadow doesn't mean you have to add black to darken it. You can instead add a color with a naturally darker value, like purple or burnt umber instead, which creates a richer, more colorful blend. So there you go. If you have any other color mixing questions or issues that you're experiencing, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment below and feel free to connect with me on any other social media platforms. The full color mixing with acrylic course is linked below, and just as a sneak peek, here is the color mixing book that you'll be making with me. I've included 26 pages of exercises for you to go through to help you understand all of these concepts and more, so be sure to check it out if you've been struggling with your colors. Thank you so much for watching, and happy painting!